You shrink yourself before anyone even asks you to. You say, "Don't worry about it," when you're falling apart inside. You apologize for needing things. You rehearse your problems 3 times in your head before deciding they're not serious enough to share. And when someone finally does something kind for you, genuinely, freely kind, something in you feels uncomfortable, almost guilty, like you owe them something now, like you've used up too much of their goodness. You've probably told yourself it's just who you are, that you're just independent, private, low maintenance. But what if it's not that at all? What if feeling like a burden isn't a personality trait, but a wound that was handed to you so early you mistook it for yourself? There's a specific kind of child that doesn't cry very loudly, not because they're not hurting, but because they learned somewhere along the way that their pain created problems for the people they loved. So they got quiet about it. They started monitoring the mood in every room before deciding it was safe to speak. They learned to read faces the way other kids learned to read books. They became experts at shrinking, at making their needs small, their voice soft, their presence as easy as possible. Maybe that child was in a home where one parent was struggling, depressed, overwhelmed, addicted, or just emotionally unavailable in that hard-to-name way where they were physically present but somehow always somewhere else. And this child, maybe you, learned one thing above everything else, that love was something you had to earn by not needing too much of it. Psychologists have a term for what happens in homes like that. They call it emotional parentification. It's when a child unconsciously takes on the emotional weight of an adult, when a kid starts managing their parents' feelings instead of having their own feelings managed. But you don't have to have a dramatic childhood for this to happen. It doesn't require abuse. It doesn't require screaming or chaos. Sometimes it happens in the quietest houses with the most well-meaning parents who were simply too overwhelmed, too wounded themselves, or too emotionally absent to consistently show a child that their needs were welcome. And children are exquisitely sensitive to that. A child doesn't think, "My parent is struggling right now." A child thinks, "My needs are the problem." A child internalizes the silence, the sighs, the tension in the room after they ask for something, the moments where their emotional needs were met with withdrawal instead of warmth. And so they adapt, because adaptation is survival, and children will do anything to survive within the family they depend on. Here's what that adaptation looks like when it grows up with you. You struggle to ask for help even when you desperately need it. You'll Google a symptom for 3 hours before texting a friend who's a nurse. You'll sit with a problem for weeks before mentioning it to someone who could have helped in minutes. And when you finally do reach out, you preface it with, "I'm sorry to bother you," or "I know you're busy," or "This is probably stupid, but," as if you need to apologize for existing in someone else's space. You overgive because giving feels safe. Giving feels justified. When you're useful, you're wanted. When you're needed, you belong. But the moment the dynamic flips, the moment you're the one who needs something, it feels like standing on unstable ground. You minimize your own pain. Someone asks how you're doing and you say, "Fine," or "Tired," or "Just a lot going on." Vague enough that nobody feels obligated to dig deeper, but honest enough that some tiny part of you hoped they would. And in relationships, you do something quietly devastating. You monitor. Constantly. You watch for signs that you're becoming too much, too emotional, too needy, too present. You watch for the shift in someone's tone, the slightly shorter text reply, the moment they seem distracted, and you catalog it. You start pulling back before they can push you away. Because somewhere in your nervous system, abandonment doesn't feel like a possibility. It feels like a certainty that hasn't happened yet. And here's the part that most people never hear. That voice inside you, the one that says you're a burden, that you ask for too much, that you should need less and give more. That voice is not the truth. It is a recording. It is an old message that was written by an environment that was not equipped to love you the way you needed to be loved. You did not come into this world apologizing for yourself. Think about that for a moment. A baby doesn't say, "I'm sorry for crying." A toddler doesn't say, "I hate to bother you, but I'm scared." They need, openly, loudly, completely. Because needing is not shameful. Needing is human. Needing is what you're supposed to do. The shame was taught. It was taught in the seconds after you cried and no one came. It was taught in the room where you learned to go quiet so the grown-ups wouldn't argue. It was taught in the thousand small moments where your emotional needs were inconvenient or invisible or too much for the people who were supposed to hold them. And you did what any intelligent child would do. You adapted. You made yourself easier to love. And in doing so, you made yourself harder to know. There's a painful irony at the center of all of this. The people who feel most like burdens are often the most giving people in everyone's life. They're the ones who show up, who remember details, who check in on others during their own hardest weeks, who hold space for everyone else's pain while quietly suffocating under their own. They are the last people anyone should feel guilty about, and yet they are the ones who feel guiltiest. Because the measuring stick they were given was broken from the beginning. They were taught to earn their place, and so even when they've given everything, even when there is no logical reason to feel like too much, the feeling persists, because it was never actually about logic. It was always about an old, unmet need that never got its answer. So what do you do with this? You don't fix it overnight. That's the honest truth, and you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfortable lies. But you start with one thing that might feel strange at first. You start practicing the belief that your needs are not an imposition, that asking for help is not weakness, that being loved does not require you to be convenient. You start noticing the moments you shrink, and instead of judging yourself for it, you get curious. You ask, where did I learn this? Whose voice is this? Is this true right now, or is this old information playing in a situation that no longer requires it? Because most of the time, it's old information. It's a nervous system that was trained for a world that no longer exists, trained for a home where it wasn't safe to need. And it protected you then. It was ingenious, actually, the way you adapted, the way you made yourself manageable to survive an environment that wasn't built to hold you fully. But you're not that child anymore, and the people who genuinely love you, the ones worth keeping, they are not going to leave because you need something. That's not how love works when it's real. The deepest wound in feeling like a burden isn't the feeling itself. It's the years spent being fluent in everyone else's needs while being a stranger to your own. It's the relationships that stayed surface level because you never let anyone close enough to actually know you. It's the exhaustion of performing okayness while quietly waiting for someone to see through it. You deserved someone who looked at all of your needs, even the inconvenient ones, even the messy ones, even the ones you couldn't articulate yet, and said, "I see you, and I'm not going anywhere." Maybe you didn't get that, maybe not nearly enough. But that absence was never a verdict on your worth. It was a gap in their capacity. And there is a profound, life-changing difference between those two things. You were never too much. You were just in the wrong rooms. And maybe this video is the beginning of you looking for different ones.